The stars were as silent as ever, but something had changed beyond the outer rim of the Erixus system. The Zalvari war fleet loomed like a steel storm, hundreds of warships, sleek and vast, floated with arrogant calm. Their hulls shimmered with particle shielding, their weapon bays always primed. For nearly a century, the Zalvari ruled with one philosophy: destroy first, ask never. They weren't feared because they were powerful, they were feared because they believed no one could ever touch them. Their empire stretched across galaxies, built from ash and submission. Dozens of alien races had tried to fight. Every single one was gone, erased. The Zalvari didn't occupy, they obliterated. They didn't negotiate, they demanded silence. But on that day, a single human ship appeared. Just one, small, dull, drifting. The bridge crew aboard the flagship Unyielding Flame stared at the blip in confused silence. It wasn't broadcasting any signal, had no fleet signature, and was cold, powerless. Captain Tirak clicked his claws against his armored chest plate. His voice rasped like gravel. "Is that a human ship?" "Yes, Captain," came the response from his sensor officer. "Old model, Federation era. No heat, no movement. It appears derelict." Tirak sneered. "Even their corpses are pathetic. Board it, strip it, bring back the bones if there are any." The Zalvari were used to this: weak resistance, dead things. What they didn't know was that inside the dead vessel, Dane Thorn was already waiting for them. Every breath Dane took was slow, measured. He crouched in the shadows of his ship, the Revenant, eyes fixed on the interface feeding him readings through a helmet visor. The Zalvari dropships were docking. He listened as their heavy boots echoed through the empty corridors. They wouldn't be cautious, they never were. That's what made them predictable. That's what made them vulnerable. 3 years ago, Dane's brother died screaming over a comm line. He was on the Helios Dawn, Earth's first colonization vessel. The Zalvari intercepted it halfway to Proxima and turned it into molten scrap. They didn't issue a warning, they just annihilated it. Dane had been on Mars when he heard the transmission cut off mid-sentence, his brother's last words choked by fire. After that, Earth tried to beg, tried to reason, tried to survive. The Zalvari responded by turning Mars' orbital defense stations into stardust. Humanity didn't go extinct, they disappeared on purpose. They went dark, shut off satellites, scrubbed their presence from every network. While the galaxy forgot them, they built in silence. And now Dane Thorn was humanity's first answer to the massacre. He wasn't a soldier anymore, not officially. He was something worse, a ghost with a pulse. The Zalvari split into 2 squads, stomping through the Revenant's corridors, claws out, weapons glowing. One of them laughed in their guttural language, dragging his blade along the walls. Dane waited. The first alien stepped past the pressure lock and never made it 2 feet. Dane's bullet caught him clean in the skull. The second turned in confusion, just in time to see his own blood spray across the wall. Dane moved fast, efficient, deadly. He had no backup, no AI assistance, just a neural rifle, homemade armor, and hate sharpened by 3 years of silence. 4 Zalvari down, then 6, then all 12. They never stood a chance. By the time the Revenant reactivated, Dane was already at the helm. The ship's engines came to life with a low, guttural hum. On the Zalvari flagship, Tirak stared at his screens. No signal from the boarding team, no vitals. Then a transmission crackled to life, a human voice, calm, cold. "You should have stayed away from Earth." Tirak's eyes widened. "Fire. Destroy it now." But the Revenant had already plunged into motion, weaving through the chaos with impossible precision. Its systems were invisible to scanners, and its speed was wrong, too fast for its size, too smooth. Tirak watched as one of his cruisers suddenly exploded from within, then another, then a third. Sabotage. Dane had hacked their security protocols, knew their fleet language. Earth had spent years studying their weaknesses while pretending to be dead. What was happening now wasn't a skirmish, it was a reckoning. And Dane Thorne was the messenger. The hunt begins. The Revenant pulsed forward like a predator cutting through a herd. Zalvari ships moved in mechanical patterns, perfect, predictable, and that's what made them vulnerable. Dane sat hunched at the command module, eyes locked on the fleet layout. His fingers danced across the controls, manually rerouting power to auxiliary thrusters. No autopilot, no onboard AI, he didn't trust anything he hadn't built himself. Zalvari viruses had corrupted human defense systems before. Earth learned that lesson too late. He slid a targeting overlay onto the display. 3 nearby cruisers forming a shield perimeter, each had weak points, venting shafts, hyperdrive coils, undercarriage stabilizers. Dane had memorized every detail during Earth's silence. Dane wasn't hiding, he was infiltrating, stealing data, mapping, planning. His right hand hovered over the fire controls, but he didn't fire, not yet. Instead, he pressed a thin silver switch beside his seat. A second later, the Revenant ejected 3 pods, barely larger than briefcases, each aimed at one of the cruisers. "Hello, boys," Dane muttered. Inside each pod was a nanite dispersal charge, specifically designed to chew through the Zalvari's quantum shielding and fry the internal navigation systems. They'd been tested once on a dead Zalvari husk orbiting Neptune. It took the ship 5 minutes to tear itself apart. Dane sat back, waiting. At first, the cruisers remained motionless. Then, one by one, their course trajectories stuttered. Glitches flared across their plasma drives. Sparks shot from their antenna arrays. Moments later, the first ship listed sideways, then split clean in half. The second exploded from within, its reactor cooked alive. The third went dark. 3 down, Dane said flatly. 200 to go. He knew it wasn't a war he could win, ship for ship, not alone. This wasn't a war at all, it was a warning. He keyed in a new trajectory and slipped deeper into the fleet's underbelly, ducking between sensor arrays and floating wreckage. Tirak's fleet had positioned itself for intimidation, not defense. They weren't expecting an enemy to hunt them. Inside the unyielding flame, Tirak was no longer sneering. His claws clicked faster, his black tongue flicking in agitation. He barked orders to his crew, commanding scans, recalibrations, blind firing. Nothing helped. The Revenant was a ghost, too quiet, too fast. Tirak slammed his fist into the control panel. "What kind of ship is that?" No one answered. They didn't know. But Dane knew what it was. It was Earth's guilt forged into steel. As the Revenant slipped through the chaos, Dane allowed himself a moment, just one, to look at the photo clipped beside his console. A boy, brown-haired, smiling wide, missing one front tooth, holding a model spaceship in his hands. His little brother, Liam. Dane closed his eyes. He could still hear the last message, "Big bro, tell mom we saw the ice rings. They're huge. Feels like flying through a rainbow. We're going to start orbit burning like, wait, what's that?" Then static. They never even made it to Proxima. Zalvari ships tore through the civilian vessel like it was a toy. No one on board was armed. There were children, scientists, grandparents. They didn't care. Afterward, when Dane tried to call for retaliation, the Federation silenced him. Claimed they couldn't afford another war that Earth would lose. That survival meant hiding. But hiding wasn't survival, it was surrender. So Dane vanished, took what savings he had, moved off-grid, and built the Revenant from scraps, favors, and stolen tech. Everything they said humanity couldn't do anymore, he did. And now he was going to make the Zalvari remember why humans were never meant to be underestimated. "Multiple cruisers offline, Commander," said the Zalvari weapons officer. "We're detecting internal sabotage." Tirak snarled. "Find him." Now. He's jamming every spectrum. We don't even know which direction he came from. Tirak's voice dropped low, dangerous. Then stop thinking like warriors and start thinking like prey, because he's hunting us. You understand? The crew stiffened. Fear hadn't touched them in decades. Now it was crawling up their spines. Dane's voice crackled over the fleet-wide comms. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he just spoke. This is Dane Thorne. You remember Earth, the planet you burned? I'm what's left, and I'm not here to negotiate. The message looped once, then cut. Silence fell across the fleet. On board a smaller patrol frigate, Svarken, a young Zalvari officer stared at the screen, hands trembling. His voice was quiet. He's one human. His commander didn't answer. The Revenant dove straight into the Scourge's path, dodging plasma bursts and magnetic spikes. Dane spun the ship under the creature's arm and brought it face to face with its twisted helm. The thing turned to him slowly, like it recognized him. A voice echoed through the Revenant's comm, but it wasn't Zalvari, it was human, garbled, distorted, pained. Dane's heart froze. The voice was Liam's. He staggered back from the console, eyes wide. No. The voice came again, clearer this time, warped, stretched with rage and grief. Vera stared in horror. They used his mind. The Scourge lashed out, and the Revenant took a direct hit, spinning into a debris field. Dane righted the ship just in time to avoid another strike. He's alive in there, Dane said, chest heaving. They didn't just clone him, they trapped him. And now he's their weapon, Vera whispered. Dane, you might have to kill him. No, Dane snapped. I'm not leaving him like this. The plan was insane, even by Dane's standards: get close, board the Scourge, find what remained of Liam inside, and shut down the hybrid core manually. Alone? Briggs asked. Dane nodded. It has to be me. If there's anything left of him, he'll listen to me. Vera pulled him aside before the mission. You could die in there. I should have died 100 times already. Her voice broke. That doesn't mean I want to lose you now. He looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, his expression softened. I have to try. Then he turned and walked toward his fate. Into the heart of darkness. The Revenant launched a boarding torpedo straight into the Scourge's chest plate. The explosive casing broke open, and Dane burst out into chaos. Inside was a world of nightmares, twisting black corridors pulsing with bioenergy, filled with echoes of screaming voices. The structure wasn't built like a ship, it was like walking through a heart, a corrupted one. He fought through half-formed drones, automated defense limbs, and psychic dissonance that nearly cracked his skull. All around him, the ship spoke, Dane. Dane, why didn't you save us? He followed the core pulses deeper, guided by Liam's faint mental echo. Finally, he reached it, a chamber of light and pain. Suspended in a cocoon of wires and bone was what remained of his brother, a barely human figure, face twisted in agony, body covered in Zalvari tech. Liam. Dane stepped forward. The thing's eyes snapped open. Dane. He dropped his weapon. I'm here. I found you. Liam's voice was shattered glass. It hurts. I couldn't stop them. You don't have to. I'm getting you out. But as Dane approached, Liam's body twitched violently. A surge of energy burst from his chest. I'm not alone, he rasped. They're inside me. Dane's wrist console beeped. The Singularity core was overloading. They're forcing me to blow this whole system, Liam groaned. Kill you, kill the fleet. I can't stop it. Dane grabbed his brother's shoulders. Yes, you can. I'm not strong enough. You're my brother. You're the strongest person I ever knew. A pause. Then Liam nodded. Then let's end it together. They reached for the core stabilizer. Dane rerouted the energy into a feedback loop. Liam, screaming in pain, directed his own neural link against the Zalvari programming. Outside, the scourge began to tremble. Inside, Dane held his brother tight. "Thank you," Liam whispered, "for remembering me." Then the core exploded in white light. The scourge imploded, collapsing into a dense sphere before disappearing entirely in a final pulse of gravity. The shock wave rippled across the fleet, but the Revenant survived, barely, dragged back by emergency tethers. No one saw Dane for 2 days. When the med bay doors opened again, he walked out alone. Liam was gone, but not forgotten. The Reckoning. Weeks later, the high caste of the Zalvari fell silent. Their fleets began retreating. Worlds once enslaved declared independence. And the galaxy breathed again. Dane stood at a makeshift memorial on a liberated colony, surrounded by names of the dead etched in steel. Liam's name glowed at the top. Vera approached quietly. "They want you to speak, to say how you ended it." He shook his head. "I didn't end it. I just gave it a chance to end." She smiled. "That's enough." Dane stepped onto the platform and looked at the crowd. Thousands stood watching, survivors, soldiers, children born in war. He didn't speak loudly, just clearly. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a man who got tired of watching good people die." He looked up at the stars. "But if I've proven anything, it's that humans don't stay dead. We don't stay quiet. And we don't kneel." He placed his hand over Liam's name. "Let them remember what happens when they try to erase us." The crowd roared. And somewhere in the stars, Dane Thorne knew Earth lived again. And it remembered everything. The hunt continues. He fired a hole-piercing torpedo at the reactor exhaust port, not the main core, that was too well protected. He was aiming at the stabilizer feed that balanced internal pressure. The torpedo struck with a dull thud and vanished inside. 3 seconds later, a microburst flared through the flagship's underbelly. The stabilizer screamed. Dane had just disabled one of the 3 coolant loops running through the power core. Now the whole ship would overheat by 20% every 10 minutes. He wasn't trying to destroy it outright, he was cooking it from the inside. Inside the unyielding flame, alarms shrieked. Zalvari engineers screamed orders, scrambling to reroute heat across backup systems. Tirak stormed into the core chamber, his black cloak trailing smoke from a recent short circuit. "Where is he?" One of the engineers looked up in panic. "He's underneath. We can't get a firing angle, he's using the wreckage as cover." "Then ram it," Tirak bellowed. "Crush him." The helmsman hesitated. "Sir, if we move, the heat will spike beyond threshold." "The stabilizers." Tirak grabbed the helmsman by the throat and slammed him against the console. "Do it." The ship groaned as its massive thrusters engaged. From his cockpit, Dane watched the flagship begin to drift. The sudden heat bloom was visible in the spectrum scanners, that meant they were reacting, panicking. But moving the ship was exactly what Dane wanted. He engaged the magnetic clamps on the bottom of the Revenant and latched onto the flagship, an old Earth pirate trick. He turned off his main engines and let the giant warship carry him, invisible to sensors and hidden in their blind spot. "Now take me home," Dane muttered with a grin. From here, he had direct access to their maintenance frequency, a low-level signal used for internal diagnostics. He tapped in a dirty bypass code, something he'd stolen during a Federation black site raid 2 years ago. To his surprise, the code still worked. Lazy bastards never updated their encryption. He scrolled through system logs, pulling reactor data, internal camera feeds, shield diagnostics. The flagship was overheating fast. Fires had started in one wing. Automated containment failed. That meant one thing, the core was exposed. He just needed a way inside. That's when he saw it. A docking bay on the underside had been damaged during the earlier battle. Its exterior doors stuck partially open, the interior shields flickering, unsecured. He had a shot. Dane disengaged from the hull and drifted closer, using the side thrusters to slip into the breach. The Revenant groaned from the pressure changes, but the ship held together. The moment he cleared the threshold, he engaged internal dampeners and landed inside the bay with a soft metallic clunk. He was inside the Zalvari flagship. Alone. Outnumbered. Exactly where he wanted to be. The final confrontation. Dane stepped out in full armor, sleek, matte black, reinforced with lightweight alloy stolen from a Zalvari research lab. His helmet locked tight, HUD syncing with the Revenant sensors. He wasn't just walking in to destroy the ship, he was here to kill Tirak, the monster responsible for his brother's death. The docking bay was empty, half-burned, partially collapsed. He moved fast, keeping to shadows, pulse rifle up, scanning every hallway. Zalvari guards were already rushing to containment breaches elsewhere, leaving the southern maintenance wing mostly unguarded. He moved like smoke, slipping through corridors, placing silent charges along conduits as he passed. Dane didn't have a full strike team, but he had rage and a plan. Tirak's command chamber sat at the center of the upper deck, surrounded by 2 shield walls and elite guards. Dane needed to breach both without drawing the full brunt of the fleet's security, which is why he'd planted the charges. Back at his wrist console, he tapped a command, detonate South Wing cooling core. Yes. The ship rocked violently as an internal explosion tore through the secondary coolant system. Flames belched out of the corridor vents. Emergency doors slammed shut. Sirens howled across the entire level. Just like he'd planned. With systems going into lockdown mode, most automated defenses rerouted their attention to the fire zones. Dane used the chaos to sprint through the now unsecured corridor that led directly to the command deck. 2 guards spotted him mid-run. He shot both in the throat before they could raise an alarm. The door ahead blinked red, blocked. Dane slammed a charge onto it and ducked left. The explosion sent the door flying backward in a cloud of smoke. Inside, Tirak stood from his throne, surrounded by 3 armored guards. His skin glistened in the emergency lighting, and for the first time in his long rule, his expression wasn't amused, it was wary. "Human," he hissed, raising a glowing spear. "You dare step foot on my ship?" Dane said nothing. He raised his rifle and fired. The blast took 1 guard in the face. Another dove at him and caught a knife to the gut. Tirak rushed forward, swinging the spear. Dane ducked low, rolled, and came up firing. Sparks flew as the spear glanced off his chest plate, knocking the wind out of him. He stumbled but kept his aim steady. 2 shots. One hit Tirak's leg, the other struck his shoulder. The Zalvari leader roared, swinging again, but Dane dropped under it and slammed his boot into the alien's chest, knocking him backward into his throne. Dane leveled the rifle, breathing hard. "This is for Liam Thorne," he said. He pulled the trigger. The shot tore through Tirak's skull, leaving nothing behind but charred flesh and silence. Dane stood still for a moment, heart pounding. Then he keyed his wrist comm, Revenant, detonate internal charges on exit route. "We're done here." The ship shuddered again as he retraced his path, smoke and fire chasing him down collapsing corridors. By the time he reached the docking bay, the Revenant had already activated emergency lift protocols. He jumped in, the ship pulled away as the flagship's core began to overload. From space, it looked like the sun cracked. The unyielding flame split open, its reactors tearing through the spine of the mighty vessel. A shock wave blasted outward, sending debris across the fleet. The Zalvari had just lost their throne, and they'd lost it to 1 human. As Dane drifted away into the stars, the transmission looped again, stronger this time, broader, "Earth lives, and we remember everything." And across the galaxy, people started to listen. The awakening. The wreckage of the unyielding flame drifted in cold silence, its fractured remains spinning in slow, mournful arcs. Light from the nearby star caught the metal edges and glinted off twisted beams like the flash of a closing casket. Dane Thorne watched it all from the Revenant's cockpit, face unreadable beneath his helmet. He sat in stillness, breathing steady, the adrenaline slowly draining from his muscles. The ship was dark inside, emergency lighting only, the hum of backup systems the only sound. One man, one ship, and a fleet in shambles. He should have felt satisfied, victorious, maybe even relieved. But all he felt was tired. Because this wasn't the end. The death of Tirac was only the beginning. The Empire didn't die with its tyrant, it just got angry. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the message had reached ears it wasn't supposed to. The encrypted signal Dane had broadcast from the Revenant had bounced through dozens of relay nodes, black market satellites, and dead Federation comm buoys. It spread like a virus, like a spark in a powder room. Old enemies of the Zalvari who had long accepted their place in the dark were waking up. On the jungle moon of Yaris 5, the last remnants of the Vaughn Collective heard the transmission and stood in silence around their dying flame. Their leader, a scarred female named Korra, played the human's message twice, then turned to her people, "If Earth breathes, then so do we." On a mining asteroid once used as a slave pit, the chain gangs of the Krees broke formation and started whispering among themselves. On a rusting freighter in deep neutral space, a hidden Federation exile named Captain Vera Mayer cracked a grin as she listened to the transmission. "So the ghosts of Earth are back, huh?" One message, that's all it took. Dane didn't just kill a warlord, he cracked the illusion of Zalvari immortality. And in doing so, he lit the galaxy on fire. Back inside the Revenant, Dane leaned back and stared at a blinking light on his console, an incoming transmission. Not Zalvari. Not human either. Unknown. He paused for a moment, then accepted. The screen flickered, and a weathered face appeared, dark-skinned, wrinkled, with one milky white eye and tribal scars down his jaw. A Danari, a species the Zalvari had enslaved 3 decades ago. The man looked at Dane in silence, then gave a slight nod. "Human. Name's Dane Thorne. I know. The whole sector knows now." The Danari smiled grimly. "You have no idea what you've done." Dane said nothing. The man continued. "They'll come for you, not just soldiers. Everything. The ruling caste will unleash the Murs, the collectors, assassins with starfire in their veins. You killed one of their gods." Dane leaned in. "Then let them come." The Danari chuckled. "Spoken like a true Terran." He paused, voice lowering. "You should know, you're not alone. We've been watching, waiting, hiding. You want to fight?" The man's face hardened. "We want to win." Then the transmission cut. Dane sat there, staring at the screen. A resistance. A spark of rebellion was growing, and now he was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. The price of war. The Revenant limped through debris, systems strained from the damage it took during the fight. Dane pulled open the maintenance panel beside his chair, reaching into the mess of wires and tools. Sparks shot out as he rerouted power. He'd been working without rest for 20 hours, still hadn't taken off his armor. He couldn't sleep, it was dangerous now. There was no one to take the watch. He worked in silence until a warning light flashed across the HUD, tracking signal detected. Dane's jaw clenched. They found him. A proximity alert followed, 3 Zalvari interceptors cutting through the field, fast and tight. Sleek black triangular ships with pulse cannons and rift torpedoes. They weren't sending a fleet this time, they were sending hunters. Dane punched the thrusters and veered hard left, skimming the edge of a spinning dreadnought corpse. Lasers sliced past his hull, close enough to rattle bolts loose. He returned fire, aiming not at the ships but at the debris around them. One shot shattered a piece of an old engine core, sending a shockwave of shrapnel through the path of the closest interceptor. Its shields flared, but the pilot overcorrected and slammed into a drifting panel. One down. The other two adjusted, forming a cross pattern. Dane ducked down low behind the wreck of a cruiser as they moved to flank. He triggered his rear mines, old-style Earth fragmentation pods. Cheap but brutal. One of the interceptors was caught in the burst. It didn't explode, it simply vanished. Just one left now. The last Zalvari pilot was good, better than the rest. It twisted, arced, dove under Dane's fire, then shot past the Revenant, scoring a direct hit to the aft engine. The ship bucked and spun out, smoke pouring from the rear. Dane gritted his teeth, steadying the spin. He rerouted power to side thrusters and slid the Revenant under a crumbling hull. The Zalvari gave chase. He counted seconds, waited, then cut his engines entirely. The Revenant dropped like a stone, drifting cold, dead again, just like before. The Hunter overshot, scanning frantically, and Dane fired straight up through the ventral plating of the wreckage. One clean shot. The interceptor exploded in a silent ball of white flame. Dane exhaled hard. His ship was damaged, fuel low, hull scorched, but he was alive. For now. As he drifted into deeper space, away from the battlefield, Dane finally allowed himself a moment. He turned off the alarms, shut down his console, slid out of the chair, and into the small quarters at the rear of the ship. The moment he took off his helmet, he looked 10 years older, exhausted, hunted, hollowed. But his eyes, those steel blue eyes, still burned. He sat at the edge of the bunk and pulled out the data chip from his armor pouch, the same chip that carried every message, every name, every casualty Earth recorded during the Zalvari genocide. He plugged it into a small terminal. The screen lit up with names, thousands of them. His brother, his brother's wife, their kids, friends, soldiers, scientists, children. All gone. And now Dane carried all of them with him. The terminal blinked, a new update. The Danari had sent a packet, encrypted coordinates, safe harbors, contacts, frequencies for other groups scattered across sectors. All of them ready to rise, waiting for a leader, a symbol. Dane wasn't sure he was that, but maybe, just maybe, he could be enough. He stood, slid the chip back into his armor, and returned to the bridge. The Revenant sputtered back to life, its panels cracked but still functioning. As the ship turned toward the edge of the system, Dane whispered quietly to the stars. "You started this," he said. "Now I finish it." He opened a channel to the encrypted resistance frequency. "This is Dane Thorne, broadcasting from Sector H-17. Tirak is dead. The unyielding flame is dust. If you're listening, you are not alone. Earth remembers, and we are not done." He closed the channel and punched in the jump coordinates. The Revenant's engines flared, and it vanished into hyperspace. The galaxy wasn't ready, but it was about to learn, you don't erase humanity, not without bleeding for it. The resistance. The Revenant dropped out of hyperspace with a hard jolt, its hull groaning from the strain. Dane tightened his grip on the console as alarms blared. Another coolant line had cracked mid-jump, leaving a thin mist of vapor hissing near the rear panel. He sighed. "Got to fix that before I cook alive in here." Outside the cockpit, a red dwarf sun cast dim light over a jagged asteroid belt. Among the tumbling rocks, camouflaged inside a crevice, waited an ancient mining station, long abandoned by the Federation after the collapse of the outer colonies. At least, that's what the registry said. But Dane knew better, because a few clicks away from that drifting ruin was something more, life signs, power surges, internal movement. He'd made contact with the resistance, and now, for the first time in 3 years, Dane Thorne wasn't alone. As the Revenant approached, a hail came through, encrypted, tight beam. A gravelly voice crackled over the speakers. "Unidentified vessel, hold position. Transmit clearance code or be fired upon." Dane keyed in the Danari code packet he'd received. Silence. Then the voice returned, this time cautious. Revenant, proceed to docking bay 3. Do not power weapons. We'll be watching. Wouldn't expect anything less, Dane muttered. He maneuvered carefully into the docking ring, clamps latching with a heavy clang. As the airlock cycled, Dane stood by the loading ramp, rifle on his back, pistol holstered, helmet under one arm. He didn't know who was on the other side of the door. Allies, maybe. But in this galaxy, ally was a word as unstable as plasma. When the ramp dropped, the first thing Dane saw was the barrel of a gun pointed right at his face. Then came the voice behind it, female, sharp. Hands where I can see them, Terran. Dane raised his hands slowly. Easy. Not here to pick a fight. You picked one the moment you lit up Tirax's ship like a bonfire. She stepped into the light, tall, dark-skinned, a jagged scar running from her cheek to her collarbone. Her gear was cobbled together from half a dozen species armors, worn like war trophies. And you are? Dane asked calmly. Captain Vera Mayer. You're Dane Thorne. It wasn't a question. Guilty. She studied him for a beat, then lowered the weapon. The others behind her, 3 of them, armed and armored, reluctantly followed her lead. You've stirred up a lot of ghosts, Thorne. Some of them ain't friendly. Ghosts are all I've got left. Vera smirked slightly, then turned. Come on. The council wants to meet you. The council turned out to be 6 beings seated around a circular chamber in what used to be a cargo hold. Each one represented a surviving faction, small, splintered, but determined. A Danari war monk. A Lutheri tactician with cybernetic eyes. A grizzled human colonel named Briggs who had once commanded Earth's last surface resistance unit before the Zalvari burned South America. And Vera, standing at the head of the circle, arms crossed. Briggs spoke first. You really took down the unyielding flame? Dane nodded. And Tirax. The room fell quiet. The Lutheri muttered, they'll answer with blood. You've shattered their illusion of supremacy. I didn't come here for applause, Dane said. I came here to make sure this wasn't just a one-time miracle. I need to know if you're really ready to fight. Briggs leaned forward. Boy, we've been waiting for someone to throw the first punch. But make no mistake, we're not organized. We're hunted. Half our networks are dead or scattered. That's changing, Vera added. The message you sent, it's shaking stars loose. Pirate groups, forgotten militias, even old Federation ghosts are crawling out. But if we're going to do something real, we need to unify. Dane sat back. I didn't come to lead. I came to burn the bastards to the ground. Vera smirked. Well, congratulations, you just volunteered to lead. Later, alone in a makeshift bunk room patched together with salvaged metals, Dane stared at an old data pad. It was the same one Liam had mailed him before the Helios Dawn launch. Inside was a series of dumb videos, Liam in 0G, flipping, laughing, playing with his kids, talking about a future that no longer existed. They'd dreamed of a better galaxy. Now Dane was covered in ash, trying to bring that dream back with bullets. The door hissed open. Vera stepped in quietly. Didn't mean to interrupt, she said, but you should see this. She tossed him a small holographic disc. Dane activated it, and the room filled with a 3-dimensional image of a star system. Riven's Hollow, she explained. A secret shipyard. Used to be Federation, then taken by the Zalvari and repurposed to build dreadnought hulls. Rumor says they're constructing a new flagship there, bigger than Tirax. Dane narrowed his eyes. How long until it's operational? Less than a week. He stood slowly. Then we hit it. Vera raised an eyebrow. You're serious? They didn't wait. No, Dane cut her off. They didn't wait when they burned Earth. They didn't wait when they killed children. They don't get to wait now. He looked at the hologram, studying the shipyard's defenses. Massive orbital platforms, shield generators, patrol fleets. It was a fortress. We'll need everything, he said quietly. Every ship, every fighter, every person willing to pull a trigger. That's a suicide mission. Maybe. But if we let them finish that ship, it's genocide for everyone else. He looked at her. Besides, I'm already dead. Have been for 3 years. This is just me deciding what to do with the time I've got left. Vera stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. I'll make the calls. The gathering storm. Word spread through the underground networks like wildfire. Within 48 hours, ships began arriving at the hidden station, not many, but enough. A dozen fighters from the Vaughn Collective. 2 ancient Federation destroyers that had been hiding in the Outer Rim. Pirate vessels with jury-rigged weapons and patched hulls. Refugee transports converted into makeshift gunships. Dane stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as each new arrival registered. Vera stood beside him, tallying resources. 37 ships total, she said. Mixed classes, mixed crews. Half of them are held together with prayers and spare parts. What about ground forces? 200 volunteers. Former soldiers, miners, dock workers. Most haven't held a weapon in years. Dane nodded. It wasn't an army, it was barely a raid force. But it was what they had. Briggs approached, his weathered face grim. Son, I've run the numbers 6 ways to Sunday. Even if we catch them by surprise, the casualties will be acceptable, Dane finished. Because the alternative is extinction. He turned to address the room. The various faction leaders, ship captains, and volunteers fell silent. I won't lie to you, Dane began. Most of us won't make it back. The Zalvari have superior numbers, better ships, and home field advantage. He paused, looking each person in the eye. But they have one weakness, they think we're already dead. They think humanity rolled over and died 3 years ago. They think the galaxy learned to kneel. His voice grew harder. They're wrong. We're still here. We still fight. And today, we remind them why their ancestors used to have nightmares about Terrans.